Hello, hello, my bookworm friends. Kim here, and welcome on back to Bookworm Buzz. Today's haul video, my friends, is another haul video where I'm going to be sharing 5 different books with you that I have recently purchased and that are not thrillers. Now, as many of you will remember, I said earlier this year that I really want to have a year where I diversify my reading and I read a little bit more outside of my comfort zone. So the 5 books that I'm going to share with you in today's video are exactly that. They are not thrillers. They will appeal to those of you who are not massive thriller fans, or just to those of you, even if you are a massive thriller fan, who want to try and start reading a little bit more diversely, like I am trying to do. Now, do not worry, thrillers are still the love of my life. I will still be doing thriller hauls, and obviously thrillers will feature a lot in my monthly wrap-up videos. But for now, and in today's video, join me while I share another 5 non-thriller reads with you. I can also tell you, my friends, I have made a recent decision to start trying to get back into fantasy novels. Now, I read a lot of fantasy in my younger years and in my 20s, but I haven't picked up a fantasy novel in, oh gosh, I don't know how long, probably in excess of 15 years. So I have very recently actually hauled a few fantasy books, and so I will be doing a video about that. And I have actually recently started reading a fantasy novel as well, and I can say it is going well. So keep your eyes on my channel for videos focused a little bit more on the fantasy genre as well. But for now, and in today's video, let's kick off with these 5 books that are definitely not thrillers. So I have one book here that is a little bit older, not immensely old, and then I have 4 sort of more recently published books. So let's start off with the older book that I want to share with you today, and that is this book called The Most Fun We Ever Had. Now, this is the one that I'm saying is slightly older. The author here is Claire Lombardo. Now, this one, I think, was published around 2019. So like I said, it is slightly older. It was also a debut novel when it was published. I've heard lots of good things about it, and so I decided to pick it up and give it a try. It is quite a chunky novel. You can see there. How many pages is this one? Let me have a very quick look. Yes, and the font is also fairly small in this one. So this one is not going to go massively quickly. It's 532 pages. And like I say, the font is also fairly small. I'm not sure if you can see. It's not tiny, but smaller than sometimes you get in these hardcovers or in the trade size paperbacks. Anyway, my friends, this seems to be a story of family, of love, of sisters. And so when I read the blurb and I heard the good things that people were saying about it, I thought I definitely need to try this one. So let me read to you quickly from the blurb so that you can get a feeling for what this book is all about. So basically it says this: when Marilyn Connolly and David Sorensen fall in love in the 1970s, they are very ignorant of all that's to come. By 2016, their 4 radically different daughters are each in a state of unrest. So then it goes on to explain to you about the 4 daughters. They're all in different stages of their life, but basically their lives are all in turmoil. Let's put it that way. So then it goes on to say, as the novel moves through the single tumultuous year following the arrival of Jonah Bent, given up in a closed adoption by one of the daughters 15 years before, we are shown the rich and varied tapestry of the Sorensens' past. Years marred by troubled adolescence, infidelity, and resentment, but also the transcendent moments of joy that make everything worthwhile. So basically, that's all I'm going to read to you from this one. Like I said, clearly a story of family. Also, the 4 sisters, like I've said, are all in different stages of their lives, all in troubled stages of their lives. And then it seems that there is the arrival of one son that one of these daughters had and gave up for adoption, and that clearly turns their lives around and adds all sorts of joy, let's hope it's joy, to their lives and to the story. So very excited to read this one, and definitely, as many of you know, definitely out of my comfort zone, but it does sound like it's going to be I shouldn't maybe say a fun read, because it sounds like maybe it's going to be a little bit of a heavy read, but I'm looking forward to it nonetheless. Then next up, we have a book by an author that many of you would have heard about before. This is the latest one from Lisa Genova. This one is called More or Less Maddy. Now, I have mentioned before that I love books that focus on mental disorders, psychiatric patients, bipolar, depression, dementia, any of those things. And so when I heard about this book, I knew that I just had to pick it up and I had to read it, because I think this one does go down the avenue of a bipolar type of diagnosis or some sort of mental health crisis that the main character in this book has. So this one, my friends, is described as follows. So it says, Maddy Banks is just like any other stressed out freshman at NYU who doesn't yet know what she wants to do with her life. Between schoolwork, exams, and a recent breakup, it's normal to be feeling overwhelmed. It doesn't help that she's always felt like the odd one out in her perfect Connecticut family. Her blonde, toned, and tanned mother, her flawless, high-achieving, engaged sister Emily, and her always popular, athletic, easygoing brother Jack. But Maddy's latest low is devastatingly low, and she goes on an antidepressant. As she begins to feel good, dazzling in fact, a spontaneous visit to a comedy club sparks a new passion. But she soon spirals into a wild mania that culminates in a terrifying breaking point and a diagnosis of bipolar disorder. As she struggles to find her way in this new reality, navigating the complex effects bipolar has on her identity, her relationships, and her dream of a career in stand-up comedy, Maddy will have to figure out how to manage being both too much and not enough. So another one that I think sounds absolutely wonderful. Like I said at the beginning, it does go down some mental health crisis. The main character seems to be diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And so, yeah, this one definitely ticks the boxes for me. And I'm going to have to try and get to this one sooner rather than later. And then next up, we have another debut novel. This one was published in 2024. This one is called Penitence, and the author is Kristen Covell, yeah, I'm sure it's pronounced Covell. This is another one that I actually hadn't heard a lot about, but then I think I was watching it must have been a recent YouTube video where the YouTuber was talking about this book, and it just sounded so good, and it sounded like something I would enjoy, and so I decided obviously to pick this one up. This one, my friend, says as follows. When a shocking murder occurs in the home of Aggie and David Sheehan, their lives are shattered. Desperate to defend their family, they turn to a small-town lawyer, Martine Dumont, for help. But Martine isn't just legal counsel. She's also the mother of Angie's first love, Julian, a now successful New York City criminal defense attorney. So already I'm intrigued. I love books. I've mentioned this before. I love books that go down the legal route, lawyers, court cases, anything like that. So already I'm intrigued. Anyway, as Julian and Angie confront their shared past and long-buried guilt from a tragic accident years ago, they must navigate their own culpability and the unresolved feelings between them. Spanning decades from the ski slopes of rural Colorado to the streets of pre-9/11 New York City and back again, Kristen Covell's debut novel, Penitence, is an examination of the complexities of family loyalty, the journey of redemption, and the profound experience of true forgiveness. So again, just a story about people, about forgiveness, about relationships and friendships and so on. So again, another one very much out of my comfort zone, but I like to also read novels that do pull at the heartstrings and that have a very human aspect to them. And I think this book sounds like it's going to be one such read. And so, yeah, I couldn't resist picking this one up. And then next up is a book that I actually don't think needs any introduction because it's by an author that definitely needs no introduction. So next up we have The Woman by Kristen Hanna. Now, this is an immensely popular author. I'm sure many of you have probably read this book already, or if you haven't, you've heard about it and maybe it's on your TBR. Now, I must tell you, Kristen Hanna is actually the author of one of my all-time favorite reads called The Nightingale. If you guys have not picked that book up, run. Don't walk, don't trot, run. It is that good. It is actually probably in my top 5 of all-time favorite novels of my entire life. I love The Nightingale, and because of The Nightingale, I have tended to gravitate towards this author, and I have read, I think, all of her novels now. So obviously when she came out with this one, I decided to pick it up. I must be honest, this one sounds like it's got more of a wartime sort of setting, which initially I thought to myself, no, I'm not sure I'm going to like that. I'm not sure that is going to be for me. But then those of you who have read The Nightingale, if you think back to that story, will remember that it also did have a wartime setting. And as I've just mentioned, it was one of my all-time favorite reads. And so for that reason, I thought, let me pick this up, let me keep an open mind, and let me give this one a try. So for those of you who may not have heard about this one, of which I am sure there are not very many of you, but just in case you are one of those people, let me just tell you what this one is going to be about. So basically it says, women can be heroes. When 20-year-old nursing student Frances or Frankie McGrath hears these words, it is a revelation. Raised in the sun-drenched, idyllic world of Southern California and sheltered by her conservative parents, she has always prided herself on doing the right thing. But in 1965, the world is changing, and she suddenly dares to imagine a different future for herself. When her brother ships out to serve in Vietnam, she joins the Army Nurse Corps and follows his path. So yes, as I remembered from initially reading this blurb, it does go down the war route, but I'm going to, like I say, keep an open mind about that. As green and inexperienced as the men sent to Vietnam to fight, Frankie is overwhelmed by the chaos and destruction of war. Each day is a gamble of life and death, hope and betrayal. Friendships run deep and can be shattered in an instant. In war, she meets and becomes one of the lucky, the brave, the broken, and the lost. Oh my gosh. I think this one might just be another one of those that pulls at the heartstrings. Anyway, carrying on. But war is just the beginning for Frankie and her veteran friends. The real battle lies in coming home to a changed and divided America, to angry protesters, and to a country that wants to forget Vietnam. The Woman is the story of one woman gone to war, but it shines a light on all women who put themselves in harm's way and whose sacrifice and commitment to their country has too often been forgotten. A novel about deep friendships and bold patriotism, The Woman is a richly drawn story with a memorable heroine whose idealism and courage under fire will come to define an era. Now, one thing I can say about Kristen Hanna is that she often does this. She sets her books historically. She does apparently an immense amount of research. I mean, I've watched and listened to interviews with her. She travels around the world to do research so that her stories can be factually correct and accurate. And so this one, I'm sure, is not going to be any different. So obviously this one has a Vietnam War setting. But the other thing that Kristen Hanna does so well is she writes such heart-wrenching stories. They are always about, I don't want to say relationships, because not necessarily those type of relationships, but relationships in the broader and wider sense. Friendships between women, friendships between same-sex friends, between family members. I mean, she really does write stories that tend to be very human in nature. And so, yes, I had to pick this up. And actually, now that I'm sharing it with you all, I need to move this one up my TBR because I'm quite excited to read it. And I'm actually in the mood at the moment for a little bit of a break from my thriller novels. Like I mentioned, I am actually reading a fantasy novel at the moment, but I'm also reading a thriller novel. So maybe when I have finished the thriller novel that I'm currently busy with, I will get to this latest one by Kristen Hanna. And last but not least, it is a latest release that you guys are going crazy for, and that is this one. This is a 2025 release. It is called The Favorites, and it is by Lane Fargo. Now, again, if you have been living under a rock recently, you may not have heard about this book, but I'm sure many of you have heard about this one. It is immensely popular. People are absolutely loving it. It was obviously a book of the month release, like a number of these other books have been as well. Now, I did say this was a 2025, but is it 2025 or did it come out at the very end of 2024? Let me just check. No, it's 2025. So I think this one came out in, was it January or February of 2025? And it's come out to, like I say, massive rave reviews. People are loving it. I can't wait to get to it. I'm really excited about this one. So my friends, this is what you can expect if you decide to pick up The Favorites. She might not have a famous name, funding, or her family support, But Katerina Shaw has always known that she was destined to become an Olympic skater. When she meets Heath Rocker, a lonely kid stuck in the foster care system, their instant connection makes them a formidable duo on the ice. Clinging to skating and each other to escape their turbulent lives, Kat and Heath go from childhood sweethearts to champion ice dancers, captivating the world with their scorching chemistry, rebellious style, and roller coaster relationship. Until a shocking incident at the Olympic Games brings their partnership to a sudden end. As the 10-year anniversary of their final skate approaches, an unauthorized documentary reignites the public fascination with Shaw and Rocker, claiming to uncover the real story through interviews with their closest friends and fiercest rivals. Kat wants nothing to do with the documentary, but she can't stand the thought of someone else defining her legacy. So after a decade of silence, she's telling her story, from the childhood tragedies that created her all-consuming bond with Heath to the clash of desires that tore them apart. Sensational rumors have haunted their every step for years, but the truth may be even more shocking than the headlines. Oh, you guys, this one sounds so amazingly good. I am so excited to get to this one. Again, there is no thriller aspect. It seems to focus on a sport, which is interesting for me because I don't get to read a lot of novels like that. I have read, what was that novel? Something about Soto. You guys, if you know, you know. And it was about tennis players. And not by this author, obviously, by a different author. But I'm just saying, you often don't get sports sort of focused stories. And so this one, focusing on ice skating, sounds really interesting and really amazing. And then you've got this whole dynamic between these two ice skaters who actually end up at the Olympic Games. So this one, I think this one and the Kristen Hanna novel, I am going to have to get to sometime soon, because both of these just sound like they are going to be such emotionally heavy, but also amazing stories. Am I going to cry? Maybe. Am I going to cry? Maybe. Kristen Hanna has a tendency to make one have a little blood, doesn't she? Yes, that was my experience with The Nightingale. But anyway, my friends, ending then with this one. Like I say, the favorites. Can't wait to get to this one. And I'm sure many of you probably have heard about this one or read it already. So that pretty much wraps up the 5 books. I nearly said the 5 videos. The 5 books that I wanted to share with you today. If you have read any of these, please do leave your thoughts below. Even if you did not necessarily have a good experience, that is totally fine. Please feel free to still share your thoughts with me. You won't put me off. These are books that I'm very excited to read, so you don't have to feel bad if your reading experience was not fantastic. You are welcome to let me know in the comments. Okay, my friends, on that note, I'm going to love and leave you and say happy reading, bookworms. Bye.